Well, Spain's government has announced it will grant legal status to hundreds of thousands of undocumented migrants and asylum seekers.
The plan allows them to apply for residence permits.
If all these undocumented people have broken into Spain, and Spain's been on the front line of the migration crisis,
overcrowded boats continue to appear on the Atlantic horizon, heading for a single destination, the Canary Islands. In 2024, Spain saw record arrivals on the Canary route. 46,843 people reached the islands by irregular means. And across Spain as a whole, 63,970 migrants arrived through irregular routes in 2024. This made Spain once again one of Europe's major migration pressure points. But here's what's different about Spain right now. While countries such as Italy have focused on deterrence, offshore processing, and criminalizing rescues, Spain has taken a different approach. Legal pathways, mass regularization, deals with origin countries, and a model that treats migration less like an invasion and more like an economic input. Supporters say it's the only realistic option for an aging country that needs workers. Critics say it's a pull factor that will make the Atlantic route even deadlier. So here's the real question. Is Spain solving migration, or simply managing it in a way that Europe isn't ready to admit it wants? Today on The Bigger Map, we break down Spain's immigration gamble, what it is, why it's happening now, the results so far, and the risks nobody can ignore.
Picture a map. West Africa on the left, the Canary Islands on the right, and between them, the open Atlantic. This route has become one of the most lethal migration corridors in the world. In 2024, the NGO Caminando Fronteras estimated 10,457 people died or disappeared trying to reach Spain, many of them on the Atlantic route. That number alone tells you something important. Spain's migration story isn't merely about policy, it's about geography. Because the Atlantic doesn't forgive mistakes. And the boats making this voyage are often not boats at all, more like floating compromises. So when arrivals surge, Spain isn't just dealing with border pressure, it's dealing with a humanitarian emergency. And in 2024, the pressure hit record levels.
Let's get specific. In 2024, 46,843 migrants reached the Canary Islands irregularly, the record. Spain recorded 63,970 irregular arrivals overall in 2024, up from 2023. For the Canary Islands, that number isn't abstract. It means overcrowded reception centers. It means tents and temporary facilities. It means local services are strained, housing, healthcare, and schools. And it means political panic, because the Canary Islands are not mainland Spain. They're remote, they're limited in space, and they become the front door for a continent. So, Spain faced a choice. Do what much of Europe does, build higher barriers and push harder on deterrence. Or do something else. Spain chose something else, and it can be summarized in 3 words. Legalize, partner, absorb.
Spain's playbook isn't one single law. It's a system. 3 parts working together. Partnership with origin countries to shape the flow before it hits Spanish shores. Legal status at scale to shrink the underground economy and pull workers into the system. Economic integration that treats migration as labor supply, because Spain's economy is built around sectors that constantly need workers. Let's break each one down. In late August 2024, Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez traveled to West Africa, Mauritania, Senegal, and the Gambia, focusing explicitly on migration cooperation. The message wasn't subtle. Spain wanted cooperation on controlling irregular migration, but also wanted to expand legal pathways through circular migration. Circular migration is basically a system that says, come legally, work temporarily, go home, repeat. Spain signed or advanced agreements designed around that model during this period, and there was money behind it. The EU-backed Mauritania-focused funding is tied to migration management measures.
To supporters, this is pragmatic. To critics, it's Europe's favorite move, shifting enforcement outward and hoping the moral mess happens off camera. But Spain frames it differently from Italy. Spain's pitch is, don't just stop departures, make legal movement possible. And that matters because in theory, legal channels undercut smugglers. In theory.
Here's where Spain's strategy becomes truly unusual inside Europe. In late 2024, Spain pushed forward an immigration reform explicitly aimed at improving integration and expanding pathways, one that the government estimated could regularize the status of around 300,000 people per year for 3 years. That's not a minor adjustment, that's a pipeline, a system designed to convert irregular migrants into legal residents and workers. And Spain didn't stop there. In early 2026, Spain's government approved a measure described as regularizing around 500,000 undocumented migrants and asylum seekers linked to residency and background conditions. So the direction is clear. Spain is expanding legality at scale. The logic is brutally simple. If people are already here and removals are limited, it's better to tax them, regulate them, and integrate them than pretend they'll vanish. That's the gamble. But this approach also triggers the loudest criticism. If you legalize large numbers, do you encourage more people to try the journey? Spain says the alternative, pure deterrence, doesn't stop migration. It just makes it deadlier.
Spain's economy has a structural reality. Certain sectors constantly need workers. Agriculture, construction, hospitality, care work. And those jobs often don't get filled fast enough by the domestic labor pool. Spain's model doesn't pretend that the problem doesn't exist. It addresses the shortage by converting migrants into legal workers through established pathways, along with regularization. That's why circular migration agreements matter. They're designed to funnel labor into real shortages through legal documentation, rather than leaving labor needs to be met through irregular routes and informal hiring. And this is where Spain's policy becomes so interesting. It's not just border policy, it's labor policy. It's a demographic policy. And it's an argument that Europe has tried to avoid saying out loud. We need migration. We just don't want chaotic migration. Spain is trying to replace chaos with a system.
So, did it work? Here's what we can say clearly. After the 2024 peak, arrivals on the Canary route fell significantly in 2025 compared with the record year, while other routes showed signs of increasing pressure. A Reuters report described a major rise in arrivals to the Balearic Islands in the first half of 2025, even as attention remained on the Canaries. And reporting based on interior figures later in 2025 described overall irregular arrivals declining compared with 2024, while noting that the Balearics were becoming a growing hotspot as routes shifted. This is the pattern you see again and again in migration enforcement. Pressure doesn't vanish. It relocates. So, if Spain reduces one route through patrols and agreements, smugglers adapt. The map changes, and the human cost often follows.
Even with policy changes, the Atlantic route remains lethal. Again, in 2024, Caminando Fronteras estimated 10,457 deaths or disappearances on routes toward Spain. And in 2025, that number dropped sharply, but thousands still died, and deaths were increasingly linked to routes like the growing Algeria-Balearics corridor as enforcement patterns shifted. This is where the moral argument turns sharp. Supporters of Spain's model claim legal pathways reduce deaths over time. Critics claim that as long as the perception exists that Spain is easier to enter and easier to regularize, more people will attempt the crossing. And the Atlantic crossing is not forgiving, so Spain's gamble has a time horizon. It's not judged in 1 year, it's judged across several years. Do legal pathways scale fast enough to undercut smugglers? Or do they lag behind while boats keep coming?
Spain's approach also depends on politics. It requires a government willing to argue publicly that migration is not just manageable, but necessary. That's not common in Europe right now. Many European governments talk about migration first as a security threat
and second as an economic reality. Spain flips the order. And that creates tension inside the EU, because regularization inside a borderless zone raises an obvious question. If migrants gain legal status in Spain, what does that mean over time for movement within the Schengen area? That's the fear in Northern Europe. Spain's response has essentially been, we're choosing sustainability, economic and demographic, even if it makes others uncomfortable. And Spain has begun casting itself as a pro-migration outlier compared with broader restrictive trends across Europe.
Spain's model isn't free. It requires administrative capacity to process regularizations, housing and services, especially in frontline places like the Canaries, enforcement coordination with origin countries, and political resilience when backlash hits. Because backlash does hit. If arrivals spike, public patience drops. If a tragedy happens, politics hardens. And if integration feels uneven, voters notice. That's the risk baked into Spain's strategy. It's a long-term system operating inside a short-term political cycle.
So, has Spain solved its immigration crisis? By the numbers, Spain didn't solve migration in 2024. The Canary Islands hit record arrivals. Deaths were devastating. But Spain did something that might be more important than solving it. It built a competing model. Not deterrence first, not offshore detention first, but legalization, partnership, and absorption. And the early pattern looks familiar. When one route tightens, another opens. When enforcement intensifies, journeys often become longer and more dangerous. And when governments can't remove people at scale, they eventually face a choice. Keep people in the dark or pull them into the system. Spain is choosing the system. That's the gamble Europe is watching. Because if Spain proves that a wealthy democracy can reduce chaos while increasing legality without collapsing politically, others will copy it. And if Spain fails, Europe will point and say, "We told you so." So here's the final question. Is Spain the future of European migration management or the warning sign? Because one thing is certain, the Atlantic route isn't going away. The boats will keep testing the map. And Spain, right now, is one of the few countries trying to redraw it.